I have the honor of welcoming you all to the AmChams CEE Conference, The Future of Investing. If you are joining us from Europe, I wish you a good afternoon. And if you come from the US, I wish you a good morning. My name is John Gasbach. I'm the Country Managing Partner of PwC Croatia, and I will be the moderator for the first of our three panel discussions today that we have prepared for you. Before we start with the digital economy panel discussion, let me say a couple opening words about the conference. AmCham, Bulgaria, Croatia, Czechia, Montenegro, Romania, and Slovakia, in cooperation with the U.S. Chamber, join forces in efforts to foster a discussion on investment in Central and Eastern Europe. Our primary purpose is to inform investors interested in expanding or making initial investments in the CEE region. Three sectors were recognized and divided into thematic panel discussions: digital economy, the tourism industry, and sustainable manufacturing. These sectors are identified as a strategic opportunity for the CEE region and a potential driver of future investments and growth. Alongside the participants from the organizing AmChams, we are joined by guests from the U.S. Chamber, AmCham EU, and national AmChams from the entire CEE region. Welcome to you all. We encourage your active participation through the chat option with your comments sent to all participants. Now, in terms of the digital economy panel, I just want to give a few words, a little backdrop to it. The development of CEE countries over the past few decades is truly a remarkable achievement. Looking at the CEE countries that are EU member states, GDP per capita increased by 115% over the 2004-2019 period. And in 2019, the market openness reached 123%, and the average unemployment rate across the region was the lowest in recent history at just 4.6%. Productivity increased to 36 euros per hour worked in 2019, which caught up with levels, or was catching up with levels seen in Western Europe. The success of the CEE was largely driven by traditional sectors of the economy: dynamic exports, investments from abroad, labor cost advantages, and funding from the European Union. However, many of these engines are now gradually powering down. Moreover, it is clear that the CEE is still vastly undercapitalized. With labor capacity at its limit and strong dependence on exports, there's little more the region can do with its historical growth engines. In 2019, the digital economy in the CEE reached 94 billion euros. However, it's still not managed to fully leverage digitization of the public and private sectors, and has failed to significantly boost e-commerce and offline consumer spending on digital equipment. The largest percentage of European tech overall is building enterprise software, which is undoubtedly relevant for the new normal businesses around the globe are facing. We saw great investment surge in Q2 2020 in cybersecurity, which turns out to be another one of Europe's strengths. CEE's unicorns are worth around 31 billion euros. And 2019 marked yet another record year for technology investment in CEE, reaching almost 1.5 billion euros in venture capital attracted to the region. But in this pandemic, it looks like tech is not only there for businesses, it's driving the way we learn, entertain ourselves, shop, eat, communicate, and many other things. During the pandemic, the way people interact, work, travel, spend their leisure time, use public services and other routine activities has shifted dramatically. It is estimated that almost 12 million new users appeared online across CEE, more than the populations of Slovakia, Croatia, and Slovenia combined. Tech might be the only segment that will avoid the Great Recession that's expected. Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft held $560 billion in cash at the end of Q1 2020 and announced at least 19 new deals for this year, representing the fastest pace of acquisitions to date since 2015. Further, this summer, the EU leaders agreed on an overall budget of 1.824 trillion euros for 2021 to 2027 to help the EU to rebuild after the COVID-19 pandemic. It's interesting to note that the focus is not on survival, but rather on development. And as communicated, the package will support investment in the green and digital transitions. It looks like Europe will focus on the post-pandemic future by keeping the momentum it has regarding the tech industry, especially now when it's more important than ever. I would now like to introduce and welcome my panelists for the Digital Economy panel. We have Andrei Vilcek, the CEO of Avast, Doran Pena, Director of Cisco and CIS in Romania, Predrag Lesic, the CEO of Domain, Dalibor Kaczmar, National Technology Officer of Microsoft Czech Republic and Slovakia, and Paulo Luca, Chief Operating Officer of ESET. Gentlemen, I ask you all to join and welcome you all, but please join and unmute yourselves and put on your cameras.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon.
Gentlemen, thanks for joining. I'd like to start with Mr. Vilcek. As a starter, could you just give us a brief backdrop of Avast? I find it very interesting. It's a company that started local and has gone global. So in a brief summary, how did you get there? How did this happen?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, John, and good morning, good afternoon for everyone. As John already said, I'm CEO of Avast, one of the cybersecurity companies headquartered in the region. So the company is actually not very young. It was already founded in the late 80s, early 90s. So we just recently celebrated 30 years of existence. But really only over the last 10 years, it became more relevant on the global scene. The company is mainly focused on consumer cybersecurity that is protecting kind of the end users, the digital citizens, all of us here on their personal devices and across their personal activities online as these become more and more prevalent now, especially during COVID. I think we all switched to not just work on our computers, but also kind of for entertainment and for schooling, etc. So this thing is becoming much more important than ever. But the company has really accelerated its growth since 2010, where we decided to go international. We took the advantage of the kind of easy distribution over the internet and went through some interesting cycles. Just the last couple of years since we IPO'd in London. So the company became public in London about 2.5 years ago. We've been doing quite well in that new environment as well. Before then, we were private, even though we were backed by strong PE capital, including American money. So the first investor that we got in 2010 was a U.S. firm called Summit Partners. It's kind of focused on high growth companies, especially in high tech.
Excellent. Thank you. As a starter question for you, I'd like to ask you, we're talking about technology and importance to the digital economy. Can the region sustain further growth of the AI industry, in your view?
Yeah, I think so. So maybe a little background here. AI for us is quite critical. When people think about AI, talk about AI, I guess cybersecurity is not the first application that comes in mind. But that said, it actually is very critical for cybersecurity these days. So it's not just natural language processing or, image recognition and all these other more famous applications of AI, but AI for security has become pretty much a prerequisite for getting anything done in that regard. And so over the last years, we've accumulated quite some talent in AI. We've made a lot of investment. Our new chief technology officer is an AI scientist and a professor here in Prague. But we've got sizable teams of experts, PhDs in AI. And so I guess that gives us a pretty unique position in the local market. And I would say that the situation, if I look across the CEE region, is encouraging. That is, I think there's a lot of investment, in many other parts of the world. The local education system, for example, has realized pretty early on that AI is going to be really strategic and really important for our future. So many schools have started including various courses and curriculums around AI, not necessarily just pure technology and PhD in AI, but also connected to business matters and stuff like that. So I think from that perspective, everything is fine. One of the kind of weaknesses I see here is the whole area around product management, where I think, many companies will kind of have problems finding the right talent. Good product managers will be able to bridge that technical world with the business world, and that I think continues to be sort of weakness here. But other than that, I think it's a great place to be. We have about 1,300 people in the CEE region in total. Out of the 2,000 people that we have in the company, so about 2/3 are in CEE region, mainly Czech Republic, where we are headquartered. I would say that it's a great balance. It gives us a great balance between relatively sort of low-cost environment, even though that is changing also, and access to great talent.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll come back to the talent question a little bit later, a bit more in depth. So, but thanks for now. So we'll check. I want to turn to Doran. Doran, good to see you this afternoon. You're in Romania, and I would just like to start again talking about technology. We talk about AI. My first question to you is talking about 5G and 5G implementation. What's the current status of 5G implementation in the region, in your view, and what's preventing any full-scale implementation going forward?
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. Indeed, 5G is one of the hot topics and hot subjects that we are discussing about these days. And if we look at the level of implementation, many companies, especially service providers, are doing progress in this direction. We can see, especially pilots. I think that the majority of big service providers in the area, in Central Eastern Europe and not only, we can expand the territory to Europe. So most of them have running pilots with different vendors using the 5G technologies, and they are testing the possibilities. They are looking at the things that can be done using 5G, and I think that that's the most important question that we need to ask and answer, and that's going to drive the adoption of 5G. Because for the moment we see most of the use cases in the use of video streaming, in the use of applications that use higher bandwidth. But I think that the deal breaker, the trend that is going to drive the adoption of 5G is new business models. And this is where we have to look as the first barrier that we need to overcome. Which are the business models that need 5G technologies? And here, of course, we have many ideas from last mile technologies to driverless cars to Industry 4.0 that use advanced technologies. And of course, when we speak about barriers, we also have to look at regulation and the use of spectrum. And many governments are thinking about the best alternative on how to approach this discussion, how to distribute the spectrum, and how to empower the service providers and the companies to use 5G in the best manner possible. So in a nutshell, I think 5G has a great potential. I would put 5G under the big umbrella of Internet of Things, because this is what it is at the end of the day. It's a technology that allows more and more devices to get online and more machines to communicate with people and among themselves.
Excellent. You mentioned Internet of Things. Just in broad terms, what about Internet of Things? How important is that to digital transformation overall and developing the digital economy in the region and beyond?
I think Internet of Things is representing a great development potential. And Again, we have been speaking about Internet of Things for quite a long period right now, but we have to put it in the perspective. And if we look at the situation we are going through right now with this unfortunate COVID pandemic that fundamentally changed and is changing the way we work, the way we play, the way we interact, I think Internet of Things is going to give us one tool, one possibility to continue working in key domains. Because most probably we'll have to put machines to talk among themselves where human presence is not going to be allowed or possible. And from here we will find those models to implement in factories, in supply chains, and make business possible. So, as a summary, I think Internet of Things is a great potential for our region because we have the companies, we have the manufacturing capability and plans to experiment and to implement, at the end of the day, these technologies for the future.
Okay, thanks, Dorian. I'll come back to you a bit later on that. We'll just move on now. Predrag Lesic from Domain. Predrag, welcome. You have a very interesting story for your company. I'd like to ask you to perhaps elaborate a little bit on how you kind of by chance created the ME domain.
Hi, John. Good afternoon to you and everybody who are watching us and listening us. Well, it's an interesting story, I must say, because we needed a little bit of luck to get this ME domain name. Basically, when Montenegro declared independence, one of the first things that United Nations do is actually to create 2- and 3-letter codes for a new country. It's done by International Standardization Organization. And those codes are created from international name of the country, Montenegro. So the 2-letter code is ME and 3-letter code is MNE. Despite the official name of the country, which is used in our language, which is Crna Gora, so it's completely different than the one that is used internationally. And basically, ME was the two combination of 2 letters that are available for allocation for the country of Montenegro. And then there is the rule where 2-letter codes is used to create a country code top level domain name. Which you can get it if you add a dot before the ME. So .me is domain name extension for country of Montenegro.
Excellent. I understand now that you have some American capital as well. How did you get to an American investor in Montenegro?
Yes, so the thing is that extension became very popular from the first day, from day one, and most of US companies were interested into running the business, running the registry. So when government announced the request for proposal, public request for proposals, back in 2007, most of US companies landed here and expressing their willingness to run the registry business. And 3 of us tried to connect with GoDaddy and affiliates, and we proposed them, to run this operation together to form a joint venture here in Montenegro, and they accepted. It looks like an easy task now, but back in time it was really hard to convince people, coming from US that we are right partner, that we are partner that they can rely on here in Montenegro. Because Montenegro, in the end, is a small country, 630,000 residents is not huge, and it's kind of difficult to build the trust and to convince people that we can work together, that we can create together a business that can be run from Montenegro and managed globally in the end. So after 13 years of work, I think we can say that we can be successful in creating a global brand.
Excellent. I fully agree, and I fully understand the situation to attract investors to a small country. Not the easiest task.
Yeah.
I'll move on now. Thanks. I'll come back to you, Predrag, a little bit later. To Dalibor Kaczmar from Microsoft. Dalibor, welcome this afternoon. And I want to ask, my first question towards you is about obviously cloud services with you. Is the region reaching the critical mass needed to move operations into the cloud?
Let me start with the short overview of investments that Microsoft is doing, and it kind of reflects how we see the region as well.
Sure.
You know Microsoft as a global vendor, which has kind of moved to the cloud world a number of years ago, and it was mainly the domain of the large data centers based in US and in Western Europe, if I name the European countries. But recently, Microsoft decided to also heavily invest and expand to the Central and Eastern Europe. And what we see in the course of the past 1.5 months is that Microsoft has announced the new data center openings in Poland, in Austria, and in Greece. So this kind of illustrates how the company is believing in the region in terms of expanding the capacity, and I can be sure that the expansion will also continue in future years. That's what type of investment we do. But it's not only about the data center and the physical capacity of computers, but also in terms of investment into people, because having the right people on the ground, well educated, able to deliver the type of services that is needed both at Microsoft side as well as at our customers and partner side. We heavily need to invest into the skilling. So one of our global initiatives about reflected in Central and Eastern Europe touches the skilling and increasing the skill set of all employees. And last but not least, we recently also investing heavily into the engineering. Again, it's expected that the company is developing the software either in US or other large subsidiaries or countries around the world. But we're growing the presence of the engineering teams in Central and Eastern Europe. And again, I can illustrate it in terms of Czech Republic, where we recently developing key pieces of cloud software for Teams, originally Skype, as well as CRM, now .NET framework, and many others. So we're currently having engineering side that counts 700 to 800 employees in Prague, and we are looking to double or triple it in a couple of years. So it's a huge investment of the company into the region itself. So that's kind of perspective how the company is looking at the region as a potential for doing the business. If I look quickly to the question, how the region is reaching the critical mass and how it's adopted, I see there are multiple industries that are, I would say, faster. If I'm to name few industries, it's banking and capital being the leader, then professional services, consumer goods, or energy. These are the leading ones. And there are, of course, some industries are rather slower in adoption, also including, public sector services. I see recently with the COVID pandemic, as was mentioned a couple of times today, many of those really accelerated because the cloud technology brought them opportunity to continue their businesses and operations even those critical times. So that's very quickly how I perceive the investment and adoption of the cloud in Central and Eastern Europe.
Okay, we'll come back a bit more on that a little bit later to talk a bit about the shifting and as you mentioned, some of the industry sectors and public sector. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that. I know you have some interesting perspectives there. I'll go to our last panelist, but not least, Paulo Luca from ESET. Paulo, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Paulo, you also have a very interesting story with ESET. I know it was founded in Slovakia back in the early 90s or even earlier. Can you give us a brief summary of how that happened and your history there?
Sure. So, ESET was established in 1992, but the product was written in 87, which is when the very first computer viruses appeared. In fact, the first one was probably in 1986 for PCs, and in 87 there were very, very few antivirus programs out there, and one of them was ours. And eventually, back then during communist times, you couldn't really start a business, so the founders of the company were just having fun, giving it out for free, and then after the revolution, they started making some money, but they still had their day jobs, and eventually they were making more money from the antivirus than from their jobs. So then they established the company, and it's quite interesting because in the 90s, the computer viruses were spreading mostly locally, like for viruses, the borders of countries were quite a big barrier, and because the world wasn't connected so well. And so, in many countries, local AV vendors popped up, and in pretty much every country. And then eventually, the world became more connected. The internet came along, became widespread. The threats became more global, and they were all of a sudden spreading between countries easily. So then there was a lot of consolidation, and a lot of these small local vendors were either acquired or they went out of business. And in former Czechoslovakia, there were three AV vendors, and ESET, Avast, and AVG. And it's quite interesting that these three companies remained strong. Eventually, AVG got acquired by Avast, and there's quite a big, quite strong cluster of endpoint security companies in the former Czechoslovakia, and at some point, I think these three companies probably protected something like 1/3 or maybe up to 1/2 of all the world's computers. So it's quite interesting, and certainly we can build up on this quite a bit.
Excellent. I mean, you kind of touched on the first question I really want to ask you is the current status of cybersecurity in CEE, and in particular, any key players. And you've mentioned Avast, and of course, as yourselves, is there others you'd want to comment?
Well, cybersecurity is quite a wide area. So, one of the big pillars is endpoint security. Another big pillar is obviously network security. And I think the stronghold in Central Europe is especially in the endpoint security area. Although I guess everybody's trying to expand to other realms of cybersecurity.
So what are the global trends that are occurring that you see that are impacting or we expect could impact the region's cybersecurity sort of profile or landscape?
So, if we go back to the history again, the 90s was the era of viruses, and they were mostly, written for fun and for fame. And they were causing problems, but there wasn't really like super bad intention, or there wasn't money to be made on viruses back then, which changed in the 2000s. As internet became more widespread, the bad guys figured out like, hey, there's money to be made on cybercrime, right? So all of a sudden, things shifted. Our opponents became much more professional, much better funded. And, these days, we're seeing even more shift, these days, malware and cyber attacks are used for espionage, for political reasons, for influencing people, etc., even for cyber warfare. So it's certainly shifting, and we see these things globally, and we see some of these things happening in our region as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. I'll come back to you a little bit later. We'll move on that discussion. Thank you. Mr. Vilcek, I'd like to come back to you again. We heard a bit about Avast as well from Mr. Luka. You mentioned the secondary school curriculum. Is the secondary school curriculum generating enough IT talent for the universities, in your view?
I think the curriculum is relatively fine. We do have some bigger problems, though. One of the problems on secondary schools, in my view, would be lack of diversity, especially when it comes to STEM. That is, the technology fields and math and science. That's been a weakness, I guess, globally. But some countries have decided to tackle that problem more head-on. I don't see that very much happening still in this region. I think, again, the curriculums are fine, or I don't think there is much needed to kind of, drive more success or to grow the existing platforms and create new ones. Sort of ignoring 50% of the population, that is the women, and just not attracting them enough, not doing, what many other countries have decided to do years ago, and now basically, reaping the benefits of that. I think that's quite a deficiency that we are now suffering from, and we have to fix rather sooner than later.
That's an interesting point. Are you, do you see yourselves or others trying to affect change there to push that, at least at the secondary school level, just to try to, be more inclusive?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can only speak on behalf of the Czech Republic. I don't frankly know what the situation is elsewhere, but here specifically in the Czech Republic, there is a very sizable organization that's called Czechitas, that play with the IT word in the middle of it, and that's a sort of like a movement. It started as a non-profit, set up by 3 or 4 women who were data scientists and who decided that something has to change, and they created this whole group of people who got passionate about the subject and eventually were able to raise quite some money for the cause from companies like Avast, but also the local representations from global tech companies like Google and others. And I think last time I spoke to them, during those years, they were able to get probably 30,000 women through their programs. Some of the programs are relatively short, they may be one-day programs. Some of them are very long, multi-year programs. But 30,000 women over those, I think, 10 years that they've been around, it's quite an impressive number. And so they have been, driving some real change. And so we are trying to improve the environment by supporting organizations like that and working with the schools directly as well.
That's excellent. I mean, the talent pool has historically been looked at as very positive in this region. And we were talking about secondary school. My next question would just be, in terms of the universities themselves, are they generating enough volume of qualified IT talent and AI experts for your liking? Or do you think that also needs to be ramped up?
I think it's decent. I mean, it can always improve. Here in Prague, we've got 4 universities that produce technical people, which I think is fine. There is some more in smaller cities in the country. I think many other countries in the region have similar numbers. So the number of university and the number of graduates, I would say, is quite reasonable if you compare that to the size of those countries and their populations. That said, I don't think any country can rely entirely on like domestic, on local people only. And one of the biggest weaknesses I would pinpoint here again is rather unfriendly immigration policies. That is, it's quite a problem to get people from outside of the country to augment that workforce. Again, Prague is a bit special in that regard. 25% of Prague workforce are actually foreigners. So it's a bit of an outlier. 25% is a pretty high number, at least in the context of the region. But I know that many cities, and especially smaller cities, not the capital cities, are totally not like that. And getting people from outside is really a pain. That is the rules and the sort of regulations that are imposed to people who want to immigrate and who want to work here are pretty harsh.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing I would add there, and I'm here in Croatia as well, they produce a lot of people, but a lot of them are part of what we call the brain drain, and they're leaving. So you can say they produce enough, but a lot of them are leaving, so you need something coming back in. So that's a very good point. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I'll come back again. Doran, we left off on IoT, and I just wanted to first touch base with you on, what you see as the big bets in IoT. And when we're talking about it is a big space. So what do you think are the biggest opportunities there?
I think if I look at our region particularly and the specific we have in our region, I think this concept of Industry 4.0 is going to be something that will play a significant role in the overall development of the region and in the adoption of IoT technologies. That's because, as I said earlier, we have quite a good starting point. I think there are many manufacturing companies in our area, in most of the countries we represent. And technology is something that needs to be adopted at higher scale in those companies, in companies with this profile. Why? Because when we speak about the principles of Industry 4.0, we are discussing about interoperability, about information transparency, about technical assistance, and of course about making decisions, and making decisions in more and more centralized way. And actually, if you think about it, you cannot fulfill these pillars or these principles if you don't adopt technology. Because in order to make decisions, you need big data. You need to get the data, you need to store the data. If you want to get the data, you need to have smart machines that transmit data and smart algorithms. And we were discussing earlier about artificial intelligence and about the talent pool that's represented in our region. So we need those algorithms to process the data, to interpret the data, and to give us good insights to make decisions. And of course, I can go even further. When we speak about augmented reality, many people are thinking about games and entertainment, but actually using fast internet connections, and that's why we need 5G, using Internet of Things, and that's why we need connections to machines. We can use people that use augmented reality to operate machines remotely, to understand better what's happening in a certain environment. So to sum up all these principles and all these ideas about IoT and technology, I think are of great potential to our region, not only because we have a good starting point, but also because we have a quite good potential in terms of human resources still.
Yeah. Losing you there for a second. Thanks. From perspective of Cisco, though, a point to you is, in terms of investment decision making, has changed now as a consequence of COVID. And I think we talked about it, but I'm sure you would agree the digital transformation agenda has been accelerated. And now, from Cisco's perspective, what does that mean?
I think, I can speak in the name of Cisco, and I can also speak about what I see in our customers and with our customers. We see a jump. We see a huge jump in the number of years we crossed in so few months. So in 6 to 9 months, we made such a huge progress that we could have done in a normal situation in 7 to 10 years. And that, of course, affects the decision-making process. Because right now, there is one thing that has changed fundamentally: the way we work and the way we interact between us or with customers and with partners. And of course, that's going to affect many of the things that we are going to do in the future. We need to work remotely, and for sure, working remotely is going to be something that will stay in the future. So we need to think about the ways that we need to adopt and the technologies that we need to invest into so that our people can work from home securely and safely and be productive, maybe sometimes even more productive than working from the office. Then again, when we think about the investment decision, we need to properly evaluate and get the data, have the data about safety of offices, about occupation of offices. And that's something very important, not only for the companies, but also for the employees. And the employees are demanding to see measures and tools that tell them whether an office or a space is safe or not. So I think that's the biggest transformation we are going to see. And the second one, and also it's very, very important on the way we make decisions, I think that starting from this period, we are going to walk the talk with a customer-centric approach. Because we will have data on how we interact with our customers. We will have to stay relevant, and we will have to stay relevant in an era that's going to have a lot of information. So changing the way we work, remote work flexibility, and customer centricity are going to be some areas that we are taking into consideration when we speak about areas where we invest in Cisco. And I think most of the companies are going to adopt these principles.
Thank you, Doran. Okay, thank you very much. I'll move to Predrag. Predrag, we talked about trust a bit, and you have many U.S. corporates using your domain. How did you build that sort of, let's call it cyber trust, to get to this position?
Well, I think we have many people who are working for companies that operate on global scale on this call, I guess. And I think we can all agree that client trust is the most important currency when it comes to business. So convincing WordPress, for example, to use WPME or Facebook to use FB.me for their global businesses is not a simple thing. And without GoDaddy, the affiliates' trust in this extension would be significantly lower. But when big companies are in the chain of ownership, then clients don't question their business decisions. When you're sure that affiliates provides a really robust world-class registry platform and GoDaddy successfully convinced WordPress and Facebook to start using and I must say that with this cyber trust, we attracted in a few years such a huge interest that BBC, for example, has a ticker about .me as the most successful new country code domain name ever. The other thing that is crucial for success and trust in the end is no business barriers. In our industry, it means that simplified registrations are crucial, where CCTLD is actually acting as a GTLD. GTLD means global top-level domain name. When I say we are acting as a GTLD, it means that you can register domain name of Montenegro without any limitation, you know. It's a first come, first serve policy. It's available over the business partners around the world. Everything is automated, everything is fast, and in the end, the database is quite secure and robust. If you don't mind, I will touch base a little bit on the talent in the region also.
Sure.
Because I agree with Andre that we have really good talent here in the region, engineers at the first level. For problem solving. And I'm not sure if our education has access to all modern tools that are used in work, but I'm quite sure that if access is provided, we can successfully jump into the train in really short time. Just to support this theory, I can give you examples from the region that are so successful, like Nordeus from Belgrade, who is gaming startup that bootstrapped from the scratch. And then, for example, Rimac Automobili, a brand so important today that Porsche invested into them. Yeah. And a local company, probably you haven't heard about them, Logate. They provide a AAA service for telecommunication operators. And for example, they outbidded Huawei on the recent RFP for Austrian Telecom. So I think that the region is wrongly treated as consumer market. I think our region is really good for research and development, and the future investments should be focused more on the region, you know, from EU, but US too. And I think the development should be shifted to the region, and that would be the win-win position for the region and the companies also.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Predrag. I'll come back to you one more time. I've got a few more questions I want to ask you in that respect, but thanks. Dalibor, let's continue talking about cloud, and we're talking about the shift to the cloud. I would ask specifically in terms of, you know, the regional shift, is government and the business community ready to invest to this shift into the cloud? And do you think EU money could have an impact on this?
Yeah, let me start with, you know, what I see on the market, that the cloud is actually really becoming an equal option to the traditional IT. Yeah. And we see that on a daily basis. In many cases, even the cloud is becoming the first option rather than the traditional IT. When I look at the government, you were specifically asking for, I see that in many countries, the government accepted the cloud as an operational environment. So I see the same approach in Czech Republic, where the government has kind of cloud-first policy, where, you know, the IT systems, government IT systems, can be operated in public clouds, of course, while keeping all security means in place. So the solution, as well as the cloud providers, are well regulated in the countries. So that I think this is something that needs to be definitely pointed out because it's very aligned across the whole Europe. That there is increasing demand for data protection and regulatory compliance, and it both creates additional requests for the cloud platform providers like Microsoft, as well as companies that develop the software that runs on top of the cloud services. And it's definitely supporting, the governments are supporting the cloud, but they require very strictly the protection of governmental and citizen data. That's definitely important to say. But the cloud adoption is not only about technical or security capabilities, but it's also about the business models. And I think for government, it will take some time to adjust the investment models and operational models to the cloud nature compared to the running and operating the traditional IT. It also requires in many cases, a different type of work style, the team collaboration, the way the data is exchanged and processed inside the organizations. And these are the I would say, rather soft capabilities rather than technical capabilities that create additional opportunities for companies and businesses in our countries. And last but not least, once businesses and governments start to use the cloud services, they free up some of the functions, but will create a new job roles, and that is kind of connected what's been discussed already through a couple of speakers. Started with Andre, that we not only need well-educated students, but we need to educate them in slightly different areas that are rather aligned with the advanced technologies. When I compare it to the studies I personally took 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, very good point there. And I think some of that education might not occur in the university area. It could occur when they arrive at a place like Microsoft, right?
Yeah, that's great. Interestingly enough, we work with the same organization like Chiquitas, that Andre mentioned. And I have to confirm that it's a great organization, and actually it also builds the knowledge that goes kind of side by side with the regular tuition or regular education system, because it's more practical, it's more towards the everyday usage of technology. I think it builds on what the girls and ladies gain at the traditional education system.
Thank you, Dalibor. Paulo, to get back to you and ESET, are there any innovations you see coming from the region and the cybersecurity basis from your side? And a second part of that question, has ESET made any investments in the region, and what triggered this decision?
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is all about people. If we go to the essence of this business, it's like you have this small group of very skilled, very intelligent people with bad intentions. Then you have the majority of people, common folks, who just want to enjoy the technology. They don't really understand technology in depth, and they don't even need to. Not everyone can be an expert in everything. And so there's this big information asymmetry, and this asymmetry is misused by the bad guys to do, attacks and to play all sorts of tricks on the majority. And then there's another, minority of highly skilled and intelligent people with good intentions, which is, the cybersecurity companies. And they're basically trying to cancel this information asymmetry. They're trying to develop, technologies and products which, help the majority to be less vulnerable to these attacks. And so ultimately, it's all the investments should be into these people, like into building their skills, into like I would say technical education, so we can grow the amount of people on the good side. And we've been doing a lot of investments in this area. For example, recently we established or helped establish something called the Campbell Institute of Intelligent Technologies, which is a private research institute in the area of artificial intelligence. It's led by a former dean of one of the IT faculties here, and she has quite a strong team of researchers. They're doing both applied and also basic research in the area of artificial intelligence. We're making quite a big investment into something we call ESET Campus. Over the next couple of years, we would like to build this technological hub where ESET will be based, of course, but not only ESET. We would like to have there many other technological companies, and we would like to interconnect this campus with the universities which are nearby, and create this like ecosystem, almost like a small Silicon Valley in Bratislava. So these are quite some big investments, and I hope they will ultimately end up bringing some interesting innovation.
Excellent. Thank you. Gentlemen, I want to thank you. Our hour has actually passed by very quickly, and I saw a lot of questions. I feel like we just got started, but unfortunately, we have to come to an end here. I thank each of you very much for your comments and discussion. I think overall we can conclude that there's action required by policymakers, by businesses and individuals to get to the next new normal, and I think you're all going to be a big part of that picture going forward. So thank you again, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So hello everyone. Thank you for interesting discussions on the first panel. I'm pleased to be here with my esteemed panelists on the tourism industry panel. So let me start with just short introduction about our panel and what we are actually going to talk about. So basically investments in the region, at least when we speak of tourism industry, is basically pretty diversified and really should be observed on country to country base. Namely, what we see in the development pipeline for the next 5 years in the CEE region is almost 37,000 new hotel rooms. Interestingly, Austria and Turkey make 50% of the planned investment pipeline, 11,000 and 8,000 hotel rooms respectively. Then we have basically a huge gap. And on third position, we have Hungary with approximately 3,000 new hotel rooms. And in fourth position, we have Croatia with something about 2,500 new hotel rooms. When we speak about investment volumes, region is going to see approximately between 5 and 6 billion euros of investments by 2025. Again, Turkey and Austria will make more than 50% of the planned investment volume, followed again by Hungary and Croatia. Fifth position is interestingly held by Montenegro. The total, I mean, that kind of finding and position of Montenegro should not surprise us, because in Montenegro we see basically the strongest pipeline of upper upscale and luxury hotel development in the region. When we look at the average investment per key, Montenegro leads the group with almost 190,000 euros of investments per key. Then we have on the second position Croatia with 185,000 euros per key, and Turkey on a third position, which approximately on average invests 176,000 euros per key in new hotel development. It is also interesting to mention that around 2/3 of rooms in the development pipeline will be branded. The top countries with highest percentage of branded development are Romania, Greece, Serbia, Hungary, and Montenegro. They all have more than 75% of investment pipeline within branded developments. On the other hand, Croatia and Slovenia, they are on the very bottom with approximately 30 to 35% of development pipeline being branded. So, I mean, it seems that Croatians and Slovenes do not see much value in international brands, but that's something that we can definitely discuss throughout the panel itself. What is being actually very optimistic is that what we see from the pipeline is that approximately more than 80% of the planned hotel pipeline is going to be in the segment of 4 and 5 stars, meaning that overall quality of the tourism product in the region is going to be further improved, which is more or less continuation of the existing trend, which was happening over the last decade. Having said that, I would like now to invite our panelists to get on stage, virtual stage. Feel free now to turn on your cameras and unmute your mics. And I would like to welcome on board Graham Ross, European Head of Sales of FCM Travel Solutions, Željko Kukurin, President and CEO of Valamar Hotels, Yildi Rimlar from Radisson Hotel Group. He's Area Senior Vice President for Central and Southern Europe, and Kai Dickman he is actually General Manager of Region Hotels at Porto, Montenegro. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to have such strong group of panelists on board, and let's have a talk about investments in CEE region. I would like to start with Yilmaz. Yilmaz, it's nice to have you on board. Obviously, timing is not necessarily, the most optimistic in your career, but obviously that's something that makes us all stronger. So could you just tell us for the beginning? As we have panelists, as we have audience which are not necessarily from Europe and not necessarily familiar with Radisson and your presence in the region, could you just before we jump on the questions, just shortly outline, your presence in the region and your business model?
First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. So I'm for a relatively big geographical area responsible. You could imagine from the west part, from Amsterdam down to end of Russia, so almost border to Japan. I am mainly covering the manage and lease portfolio. We have obviously our franchise environment, so I'm more or less for 90-95 hotels
responsible. Our business model in that particular area is mainly managing the hotels. So that's the preferred business model we have.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, speaking about current situation and everything that has been happening for the last 8-9 months, could you just tell us approximately how hard Radisson is hit this year with all COVID situation globally, and I mean, how deep impact you expect?
Yeah, it's not going to be the most motivating start, most probably, to the speech, because the realities are there, and I think it applies for everyone who is working for this industry at the moment. What can I say? The hospitality industry experienced, I think, the worst crisis since the Second World War. At least in my own career, I experienced 9/11. I have been during the credit crunch period in Manchester, having hard times, but nothing stress, I think, in our industry like what we are experiencing now with COVID-19. I believe even the both crises combined, I would say, has not been as strong as this one, because you should always remember, I think the year-on-year drops in the worst cases in the past has been in any quarter not less than 35, not more than 35%. It has been hard enough, but it has been actually 35% roughly for our company. Today, when we look at EMEA region where we are operating over hotels, we see year-on-year a 60% drop in total revenues. And one fact is important here because Q1 wasn't necessarily a really bad quarter. We started actually in January relatively strong and very optimistic. So we hear, of course, something is happening in China and Asia, but obviously the expectations have never been so hard. So Q2, Q3, and also Q4 are tough. Again, as I said, we are seeing a massive drop in top lines. Now, Asia Pacific is a little bit different story. The crisis started over there, most probably also because of the regime. They could deal with the crisis situations completely different. Today, when you look at the Asia Pacific area, the business volume is coming back to 2019 level year on year in the quarter. Not necessarily RevPAR. Here I'm talking about the occupancy level. So there is a positive trend week on week. I think Radisson results are pretty much in line with other big players, in the entire industry, I would say. There are always learnings when you are going through this type of crisis. I think our teams learn to act agile and decisively. We introduced in 2017 our 5 years plan and creating a new operating model and establishing a solid agile business model has been at this time already a key. I think we had a certain benefits from these activities. Clearly, the hit has been tough for our employees, for our customers, for our investors, for our shareholders. There is no doubt about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Yilmaz. I'd like to ask now Željko Kukurin from Valamar. Željko, you are heading one of the biggest hospitality companies in the region. So just a few sentences on the introduction of the Valamar, because as I said, we have overseas participants who are not necessarily super familiar with the region. So could you just give us short intro on Valamar? What are you guys doing and where you are and where you stand in terms of regional presence?
Hi guys, I'm Željko Kukurin from Valamar, the CEO. Valamar is the biggest group in Croatia. We basically operate 58,000 beds over the whole coast of Croatia, from South Dubrovnik to North Istria. So we are in good destination here, and we have I could say that we are kind of average of Croatian tourism business. So what we have experienced this year was really, as everybody look at South industry, very tough year, I would say, not from the Second World War, but probably from the we had the very affected and the most of the crisis in the global tourism. At the end, we will finish with 30%, let's say, of normal since 2019. We will be positive in operating profit. Basically, we will not lose any money to our shareholders, but also we will gain what they usually expect from us in this year. So I think that we managed the crisis well, taking into account the circumstances. Also, I must state that we started to replan our business during the lockdown crisis. We replanned a new scenario, which kind of we called the standard scenario, that was assuming that we would not open at all the hotels. So at the end, we will end much better than that. But I also must state that during the 15th of August, we're heading to 40-50% of the normal years, when basically the travel ban started from in Europe, mainly Austria, Slovenia, Italy, and Netherlands. And when basically we have lost half of our usual tourism season. And I think this is quite a good understanding of what was happening over the whole 6 months. A lot of things were linked to the COVID situation, but also the decision of political countries and parties and everything, that the reaction was somehow hectic, and this for sure didn't help the tourism community.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, also, Kai, I mean, this year was one of the roughest years for Montenegro tourism in many years. I mean, not only COVID, but you had also kind of, political situation which was not playing well for hospitality industry either. I mean, borders with Serbia were on occasion fully closed. I mean, this year also even less air connections than usually. So, I mean, how are results and how this year playing for you? I mean, what are expected results for 2019?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on this panel, Sinisha. Lovely to connect with all of you, and not from Montenegro at this stage. I'm actually in Croatia for the first time since February. I left Montenegro. I'm spending a couple of days with the family, with our friends at the Maestra Collection up here at the Family Hotel Amarin in Rovinj. Very nice. Listen, I wish I could say something different, but Montenegro was obviously really badly hit this year for various reasons. As you highlighted, in addition to the pandemic, it was also a year of political change in Montenegro. We, as Yilmaz said for Radisson, they're looking at about 60% drop in top line. We are about on the same level. Our property itself was closed from the 21st of March until the 12th of June. We reopened. But obviously, the summer was very different from what any other summer has been before. I know that our Croatian friends here, they were able to salvage the summer a bit better because they had a lot of Germans, Austrians, Slovenes come by car. We just didn't have that in Montenegro. So we looked more towards the regional market, and so this is why our revenues were significantly down. On the profitability side, however, because the one lucky thing we had is that we are a seasonal property, so we were able to just not recruit for the summer. So we were able to carry our staff from winter levels all the way through. So we did not have to make one redundancy because of COVID. And I'm really proud that, yes, we all went through salary cuts. We all had made contributions, but I was very happy and very pleased that we were able to carry everyone through this very difficult summer. The interesting thing is that you are actually, when you have more time for the few guests that you have, that your guest satisfaction scores, they just rose through the ceiling. I mean, we not only the overall scores, but also the cleanliness scores, all of this, because you just have much more time than you had before. And that went, so we really, I mean, our room cleanliness scores, which had always been traditionally high at over 94%, went up to 98.5%. So this is really something that we took away positively from this crisis.
Yeah. Thank you, Kai. Graham, I'd like to ask you, I mean, you are working at FCM Travel Solutions. So also just to shortly understand, short understanding of our audience, can you just give a short intro on FCM? What are you guys doing, and what is your primary focus when we speak about CEE region?
Yes, sure, and thanks again for inviting us to be part of today. FCM, we are a travel management company, so actually as part of Flight Centre Travel Group, a global travel group with a number of different brands across all sectors in travel, FCM focuses on multinational and global travel programs for a wide range and variety of corporations, from relatively SME and small number of countries to some of the largest companies in the world. So we fulfill everything to do with business travel effectively. So certainly a lot of fulfillment into the hotel sector, but also across every other area, and in all of the technology solutions that link into corporations' travel programs.
Okay, and can you tell us in terms of, I mean, crisis, both Yilmaz, Jelko, and Kai discussed and so somehow, disclosed what they are expecting as a final result of this unfortunate 2020. But can you tell me, I mean, how hard is corporate travel from your perspective hit this year? How deep minus are you expecting in terms of the overall result?
Yes, well, so we're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, so financial year goes July to June. If we focus on calendar year for 2020, I'd love to be in a situation where I could say we're only minus 60%, like the other gentlemen have highlighted. Unfortunately, travel spend, when grouped together overall, actually COVID impacted the industry more than any event in history, as I think highlighted. Our studies and figures over the entire spend showed that actually 9/11 saw around 11% decline, and the global financial crisis about an 8% decline, whereas COVID-19 has seen a decline of nearly 90%. So across the globe, we are operating on an average of around about 10% of pre-COVID volume to date. Now, that has fluctuated a little bit in the last few months. We've seen some countries come back in some areas. The estimations are that we're going to be in this for at least 3 years, I think. Particularly IATA estimated recently pre-COVID levels for flights will take into 2023 to respond. But this is largely down to then government-imposed restrictions, and that means that geographies that have been impacted on international travel particularly are now going to respond differently as we go through this. So large domestic travel markets have seen less impact or are seeing a quicker return now. For example, and I think Yilmaz mentioned as well, in China and in Russia at the moment, we're seeing domestic travel back to 2019 levels almost. Across the European region, we were seeing some countries and areas coming back into maybe nearly 20-30% of pre-COVID volumes. But again, lockdowns and second rounds of lockdowns now in a lot of markets and in key business markets, including UK, France, Germany, etc. That stops people moving domestically and then in between countries where it's possible. So we're now seeing a bit of a return, and now we're seeing a dip again back But I mean, in answer to your question, the second part of your question, all parts of the industry have been impacted very heavily, and geographically, we have local service now in over 100 countries, and it's been pretty widespread. But now what we'll see is the recovery just being very staggering based on what's happening locally or in that region.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Yilmaz, I mean, Europe has been heavily hit by this COVID, because what we've seen, as you mentioned as well, you know, Asia is again picking up, recovering fastly, etc. But Europe is kind, you know, sluggish. So in terms of recovery, what do you see to be, you know, recovery path for Europe? Which products, which type of destinations you see to recover fastest, and who do you think and who do you see from Radisson point of view to be, you know, most significantly hit and to go through, you know, most sluggish development path?
Yeah. Now, obviously, no one has the crystal ball. It's not an easy question to answer. But first and most importantly, travel will return. Travel will return, but that will happen in a certain order. And Graham was talking about it, and I can only agree what he's saying. Business and leisure will return at a different basis. Domestic and international travel, the same manner. So people are already traveling. They are visiting their relatives. We are seeing some leisure travel. As long as the destinations are not really far away, you can drive by cars. But the transient business and the group business continue to suffer for a longer period, I'm afraid. The connectivity is another important factor. We were talking about it, for example, Croatia versus Montenegro. So even having the, you know, how close you are to some European countries are already making the difference, you know, the roads and the highways and all these things. I think the hotels with focus on domestic travel will recover faster. We mentioned this one. And if your hotel is or your city where you are in is very much depending on international business, clearly the business will return also a little bit later on. Globally, what we are seeing from our perspective, the economy segment is also doing better than the luxury segment. We see bigger hotels with big conference facilities are rather closed, and people are not, there are no big pockets anymore. People are not putting their hands in their pocket and pay the high rates we would love to have it. But, you know, we said travel will return. So I am, or we as a company are, I think, prudently optimistic. Me personally, I would love to say in 2023, the business might return back to 2019 level. It is clear to me that there are a lot of other experts on field, other hotel groups, also HDR. There are some, you know, people are talking about 24, even 25, but I try to be a little bit more prudently optimistic, if I might say like this. I think a lot is going to depend how quickly the vaccine is going to be available. And now we are recently hearing some good news from the market that might change the mindset and also the travel behavior. And also it's going to be very much depending in which geographical area you are. I think you were talking about Europe. Europe is a little bit complicated, in my view, for two reasons. One is the complexity of the geography and the movement of the people. So that creates obviously uncertainty. And the second one is the visitor profile. We have a lot of big cities in a relatively small continent. London, Paris, Amsterdam, even Berlin is very much depending on international business. Long-haul flights are important, and this business will take time. But from that particular region, I would like to give you two examples, at least from Radisson perspective, to maybe underline what I'm trying to say. So one is our Radisson Blu split property in summertime. We could see a relatively good occupancy. Again, not necessarily maybe same RevPAR, but very, very solid occupancy level. Why? Because, after lockdown, people want to go out again, they want to travel, and we could see a lot of German customers or Austrians, going into car, traveling to Split, and enjoying their vacations. On the other side, our parking and Radisson Blu Bucharest complex, this is one of the biggest managed hotels which we have, is suffering a big time. Why? Because the country, the city, is pretty much dependent on international business.
Yeah. Thank you, Yilmaz. My question now goes to Željko and Valamar. So can you, 2020 was not easy for you guys, but 2021, again, no one knows what to expect. So what are some kind of your innovative solutions and approach you will be using to overcome these significant drops in tourism activity? What is your basically, guest acquisition strategy for 2021?
Repeat what you said is difficult to understand what will come next first. For leisure is preferable. Everyone traveling by out, everyone booking online and directly outside. We see this as an opportunity in Croatia, which is basically doing this with 85% of all the clients coming in a normal year or coming by car. Our flight market is not so important, mainly leisure here, so we are somehow in a position. And what we have seen in 2020, we will focus even more exactly on, so we will be more focused on direct sales. We have in Valamar our very strong channel that was strong before, and we have invested a lot over the past 5-10 years in direct sales very much. So we very much focus on that. We will be focused on our products that we saw this year working very, very well. 50, let's say, percent of our portfolio was doing or 89 when the borders opened. So it's a good example of a product that was very in line with the COVID situation. So it was basically you have your separate mobile homes or camping resort homes that let's say traditional camping, but something different. And we saw that, for example, this product is doing very well. We will continue to improve this area. We will be for sure focused on the markets around us. So 6-7 markets that we have in 500 kilometers of distance. And we really see that the opportunity. In our view, I the idea that the full global travel industry can be something that I but some of the destinations here, for example, Croatia has really passed into this recovery before. Such a geographical situation, part of the business that probably will recover faster than other business.
Thank you very much, Željko. Thank you. It's a lot of work for you and your team. Kai, the same question goes to you as well. What is your survival strategy for 2021? What you in regions in Porto Montenegro are going to do, in order to make something out of 2021?
Well, we had a steep learning curve in 2020 because our main feeder markets, the UK, USA, and Russia, predominantly in the summer months, were just not traveling. So we really had to look at the accessible markets, and apart from the regional markets, Albania, Serbia, Bosnia, with Serbia only being accessible as of August 15th, as the borders were closed. We really had to see that we provide an attractive offer to those clients, because they're obviously very different than the US, UK travelers, who have a very different purchasing power and a different price sensitivity. In addition to this, we also had surprisingly good flight access to the Ukraine and to Belarus this year. So we did a lot of sales marketing activities in these countries, and this paid off. So hopefully, moving forward, we will have a good exposure in these countries. But the most important thing that we did not want to do is to slash the rates, because that would devalue the destination strategically, and then it will be very difficult over the next years to bring the rate back up. So that's why these offers were only accessible for ex-EU countries, and really the bookings made in these countries. We also looked at diversifying our strategy a bit, so we introduced long stay offers, meaning that some of our residences where you have a kitchenette, we started renting them out on a monthly basis, basically without any F&B. You had a weekly housekeeping service, and this proved very successful, especially with families who at a different price level than were able to enjoy a month, some of them even 2 months at Regent. So we're really looking forward to exploiting on this avenue, and seeing that we can tap into the accessible markets. And hopefully, as it was said before, once a vaccine is accessible, it will change the mindset, and airlines will start putting flights again. Because the question for me is there just no one in the planes because there are no flights, or is it because the flights have been reduced so much that they're not available on the days that you want to fly? Or is it because people are actually afraid of flying? I have my doubts that it's only the fear of flying. I think it's also the availability of flights at this time.
Yeah, true that. I could definitely agree with you. Listen, I would like to jump on questions regarding investments. So I can start with you, Kai, as well. I mean, you are one of the, you are located in Porto Montenegro, which was, by many, variables, one of most innovative and at some point, crazy projects. Positively speaking, and it seems that the rest of the investors in Montenegro follow the lead. So now we have number of different projects which are in one way or another being similar to business model and the form of Porto Montenegro. So can you tell me how do you see COVID influencing ongoing or planned investments in Montenegro? There is significant pipeline, particularly in upper upscale and luxury segments. So what do you hear on the market? How do you see projects being impacted by COVID?
Yeah.
Or not?
No, you're right. I mean, Montenegro has just over the past 10 years, and I've been able to now spend about 3 years there, been making such a huge progress. And as you rightly said, Porto Montenegro, with us as the Regent, was really the market leader. And you have now Lusica Bay with the Chedi. You have Porto Novi with the first one and only in Europe opening next year. So that was the first COVID casualty, so to say, the delayed opening, but they will open, I believe, the beginning of April. So the existing projects might have been delayed due to COVID. Also, Nikki Beach, for example, which was a rebranding of the La Perla, did not open last year as initially planned. It will reopen next year. But the pipeline is huge. Ritz-Carlton signed. There are still talks about the first opera in Europe. So Four Seasons has projects. So there's a lot of things happening. And hotel investors predominantly look strategically. And they are all of the opinion that travel will return. So this is really, from what I understand, none of the major projects has been jeopardized, has been cancelled or significantly delayed. In the contrary, our owning company, for example, they're just breaking ground now for Boca Place, the new addition to Porto Montenegro, another 260 apartments, another 4-star hotel. A lifestyle hotel will be added, and this is supposed to open in 2023. So I think Montenegro, with all of these projects in the pipeline, and as I said before, I have not heard that any project has been canned because of COVID at this stage. Continues to having this unique opportunity of positioning itself really on the very top of the luxury tourism in the Mediterranean.
Thank you, Kai. Željko, you are in Valamar one of the strongest, basically the strongest investor when it comes to Croatian tourism industry. How is this COVID situation? How did it impact your investment strategy, your investment pipeline? Is it going to delay some of the projects, or you are proceeding as initially planned?
Listen, the last year really great for us. We have invested almost €500 million in Croatian coast. We have done some acquisitions. We also invested in some of our properties. And unfortunately, the COVID came while we were basically finishing €100 million of investment in this cycle. And for sure now we will follow this for 4 months. Because we see that we have to understand when the COVID will come to be able to continue with our strategy at the moment will be to 12 and 4 months to focus more on organizations to improve ourselves, to prepare all the projects doing in parallel. To work more on business process and efficiency, and in parallel with our partners to look for potential acquisitions around Croatia that may be for the cure or to happen in the next period. So that's our strategy. We really have to change it very fast. We think it's logical, and I really hope that we will see the recovery of that. Then we will basically come back because we have different.
Thank you so much. I'd like also to use the opportunity to encourage participants to use the chat option and to pose any questions to any of the panelists we have on board. So feel free to drop any questions you might have, because last 10-15 minutes we'll also have time to dedicate to answers on certain questions from participants. So Yilmaz, the same question goes to you. I mean, when we speak about Radisson and your investment pipeline in the region, I assume pre-COVID situation was pretty optimistic for you guys as well. Can you tell us from your perspective and perspective of your investors whom chose Radisson for their brand? Can you tell us what and how did COVID influence the whole situation?
I think we should divide this conversation at minimum in 2 parts. One is the short term, and the other one anything else but medium term and longer. So when we talk about the short term, I would say through the COVID-19 lockdowns, understandably, we are seeing a sharp drop in investment volumes. This is clear. I think the investors take stock, waiting for the first sign of trading recovery. That's a natural reaction from the investor perspective. But I believe if we are moving into towards the direction of medium term, we are going to see a much more positive reactions. Funding is, of course, as such it's a difficult topic at the moment, not necessarily for Central Eastern Europe, but I think all over the world. But again, most banks or financial institutions are, in my view, believing in a long-term benefit of hospitality industry, particularly the hotel business. This is exactly what we have observed prior to COVID-19. Now, we were talking about it, that the travel is going to come back. We were talking about it in a couple of years. We are going to achieve 2019. So that means at certain point, RevPAR and net operating income is going to recover. Now, what does it mean? That means the net present values will increase automatically. So that's going to basically make all the investors hot again, and particularly assuming that the interest rate, which is at the lowest level in the whole history, I believe, is going to boost most probably going forward the investments again. Only a few months ago, we didn't have really a high equity need, so that was actually has been one of the lowest, and I believe that's going to also change. Now, from Radisson perspective, there are two things I would like to mention. The first one, even in a very, very difficult year like in 2020, we had signed 40 new hotel contracts in the EMEA, 40, which is not a bad sign, I would say, for a very difficult year. So that's what does it mean for us? I think the hotels are still good places to invest from the investor perspective. That's number one. We will continue, obviously, to open the Radisson Blues, the Rats, and the collection. But what we did is, and this is the second thing which I would like to mention, is sometimes crises are pushing you to become a little bit more creative. We have launched during the COVID time Radisson Individuals. Maybe some of you have heard that. What is Radisson Individuals? This has been developed as an affiliated brand, I must say, during the COVID lockdown time. That creates the opportunity for the investors for short-term franchise contracts up to 5 years. So, and the good thing is, you have a nice hotel, the location is good, but you want to enjoy the benefits of a good and strong and solid brand. You want to join the reservation system. You want to use the loyalty program. That's actually all about the Radisson Individuals. The other good thing is, we are all in a phase of where the cash is rare. So you don't have to make really big investments because the hard brands require they have a certain brand standards. So no really big investments are necessary to become a Radisson Individual. So that's a kind of a response from our group to the crisis, and also giving opportunity to independent hotels and also regional chains. And after you have 5 years time, you think about it, what are the benefits, and should I really join the group, not only like a Radisson Individual, but maybe convert the brand later on a Radisson or Radisson Blue. So short term, tough times, mid term, longer term, I see positive.
Can you tell me, thank you, Yilmaz, can you tell me also one question I'm curious about? So what do you see as which brands are in highest demand when we speak about new developments, at least from your point of view?
Now, clearly, what we are seeing is, I said it at the very, at the beginning. I think the luxury brands or upper luxury brands are going to struggle. From our perspective, I think we are going to see several openings with Radisson and potentially with Radisson Rats, at least from our perspective. I was just talking about the Radisson Individuals. We are signing a significant amount, so we have invested recently to this brand. So these are the Radisson Blue brand is for us, larger upper scale brand. It's we have a lot of contracts which have been signed, but I think there will be a certain shift from the upper upscale to rather upscale brands.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Thank you, Yilmaz. Graham, one question goes to you as well. I mean, how do you see COVID crisis influencing MICE and corporate travel? I mean, obviously MICE and corporates have been one of strongest hit segments of the tourism industry, and Yilmaz also mentioned that he expects business travel to recover slowly, etc. So, I mean, how are you afraid or you're excited about the future, at least from your point of view and what you've been doing?
I'm always very optimistic, so I'm excited. I think you have to take the opportunities that this situation has presented and make them work. Right? There's a lot of famous quotes out there about good CEOs not missing the opportunity in a crisis. I think what we know of what's guaranteed, change is guaranteed in our industry. What's really happened, the pandemic has just accelerated a lot of that change that was coming anyway, I think. And it's true, business travel isn't going to come back as before. As we said, the volumes may return, but it will be different now. There's a much greater appetite for people to work remotely, and that's not just from home. And this is an interesting area that potentially people will take business trips and then want to extend those and work in different countries. Okay, the gig economy is changing the perception of what the office space needs to look like. And even in our business, we've reacted to this, where our physical offices will become more meeting space and less desk space. I think a lot of businesses will go that way. We're now very used to video conferencing. Every year was going to be the next big year in video conferencing. Of course, the pandemic has forced that upon us globally in a way that nobody could have really foresaw. And I think it's interesting. Yesterday, after the vaccine announcement, there's a lot of share price drops in those video conferencing facilities that we saw all of a sudden happen. And there always has been a fundamental need to meet people face to face. Of course, my industry depends on it, but it's easier to collaborate. It's easier to do business face to face. And we've no doubt that corporate travel will bounce back. There's now a lot of discussion around pent-up travel frustration, and we're seeing that in some countries. But the countries we've mentioned already, where people, when restrictions have been lifted, couldn't wait to travel again. You might have also seen a very interesting, although it was a fun story, it was very interesting to see Qantas had a flight to nowhere in October down in Australia, and it sold out in 10 minutes. There was a 7-hour flight from Sydney to Sydney. It didn't go anywhere. It flew around Australia, landed back in Sydney 7 hours later, and it was their fastest Sydney flight. So I think there is this need for people to travel again. People want to travel again, and once they have the opportunity to do that for business, they will travel again. But it will be different, and I expect a lot more things that will stick. Conferences are really interesting. I've been on a lot of virtual conferences in the last 8 months, and they have worked very well. So what I do expect in that area is that we'll see hybrid conferences that will have a physical or digital attendance option, for example, where people can choose to be there in person for the networking and socializing that goes with that you can't do online, but it also gives people an option to attend or buy in digitally as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Željko, one question for you. Yilmaz mentioned about direction of typologies of investments and category of investments. So for the next, short to mid-term perspective, you are still pursuing investment strategy to go into 4 and 5 stars, right? That crisis didn't change at all. Maybe it reassured you as well.
No, I think that my assumption of what is going to happen is that as soon as we see the recovery, and the recovery will come, our clients will basically, a lot of them will come back to normal. I don't trust, let's say, the new normal and complete changes to the hospitality industry. I think that there is an awkward relation to what is happening of COVID doing to people, what it's doing to the businesses. So the ones that were healthy and strong and that were already transformed themselves before the crisis will be even stronger after the crisis, and the other way around. So basically, I really think that some of the process that we have seen over the last 5 years of transformation of our business, that we're going to more digital, to let's say, let's focus more on the X, Y, Z generation and similar. So all of this process will be accelerated after the crisis. And also the one that were not ready before the crisis to prepare for that will also have a problem after the crisis. So this is my best guess. So the strategy of upscale foreign star products in leisure tourism, I think, can stay. Will be even more lucrative to the guests, and we saw it also this year. So the rest of the drop we had in the quality product. So not, let's say, the luxury part, but the upscale part is looking better than the standard hotels from the past.
Yeah, and that is pretty encouraging. Thank you, Željko. As we are running out of time, my question to all of you participating here. I mean, topic was investments in CEE. So my question to you is, rather hypothetical, but good one to close discussion. So let's assume that you guys have, 100 million euros in your family investment fund or private investment fund. So I would like to understand from all of you, in which country, in which destination you would invest this money and what investments would be. So I don't know, Kai, I mean, you probably think about this heavily. So let's start with you. Can you tell us where would you invest a certain amount of money looking at the region and why?
I think, coming from Montenegro now, I might be a bit biased, but I see the huge potential that we have. Croatia has done an exceptional job, but they have a 10, 12-year head start over Montenegro. So Montenegro, from a destination, still has this desire to be explored and sought after. So I would probably split it into a property at the coast and a property in the mountains, because the mountains is really the part that is still lacking a branded 5-star infrastructure. Some of it is built now. With the Western, for example, in Kolashin, but there is, if you look at Jabeljak, Kolashin, there is so much potential. So I would definitely invest in Montenegro. Also hoping that the new government will increase investments in infrastructure, because that is definitely necessary. If you look at the airports, the road network, medicals, in order to really have the infrastructure on the same level as the hospitality sector.
Okay, Graham, same question to you. Where would you invest in the region and why?
It's a little bit of a harder one for me. I would probably be between Romania, Bulgaria, or Turkey, purely because Javier, who leads those three countries for us, will take offence if I don't pick one of those. But look, I think looking from the outside into the region, potential seems to be a prime region for investment internationally just now. Very young, educated workforce, a lot of good infrastructure, and I expect a lot of, in the next 3 years, a lot's going to be affected by trust in government and regulations, particularly around the pandemic, but just in general. I think stability and safety are going to be two of the biggest things in our industry from a corporate focus. And then the geopolitical and social risks that are in a lot of other emerging countries don't really exist in the same way in CEE as far as I can see and as far as the perception is. So I think that will be a critical factor as to companies investing to their base and their equity operations in those countries, and therefore a critical factor related to travel in and out of the region. So probably some sort of business park investment into one of those countries would be my money.
Thank you, Graham. Question to you, Yilmaz, as well. Where and why?
Yeah, it's also not really an easy question to answer, but I think I would take here two different scenarios. One, I would look at the opportunistic way, and the other one would be more for the strategic way. The opportunistic ways, I think there will be a lot of conversions available nowadays. So maybe less greenfield activities, but more existing, very interesting hotels, which are going to be most probably available in the next couple of months and on most probably next year. So that's something I would definitely look at it independently in each destination. From the strategical perspective, here I would also divide it maybe into two pieces. I would take up more, follow a little bit of diversification. Partially, I would invest in solid countries like Germany, Switzerland, but I would definitely look at Bulgaria. We want to go back to Bulgaria. Clearly, Montenegro has been already mentioned. We are in Croatia, but we would like to look at Zagreb. I would like to look at Zagreb, Romania, countryside. There are a lot of opportunities. But also for us, Russia, Poland, Turkey, these are interesting countries. Now, 100 million is very quickly gone, but that would be actually my strategy.
Thank you, Yilmaz. And the same and last question also for you, Željko, before we wrap up the panel and hand over to another moderator, where and why you would invest some extra cash that you have.
You're asking a Croatian CEO who is managing leading a Croatian company where to invest. I have only one answer, so I cannot even differently. Otherwise, they will ask me why I must ask differently. But really, I really believe in leisure. I believe that the investment in tourism, real estate makes sense and will make even more sense. And I do believe that Croatia, as part of the European Union, has really, again, will have an opportunity to grow the hospitality industry, because basically we have never did that. For the past 20 years, we were not refurbished in our portfolio the inherited hotel, and still haven't finished that. So we still have a lot to do. We still have a lot of potential. Croatia. So for me, no doubt.
Thank you very much, Željko. So we are up with our panel and available time. I wish thank you everyone, Grant, Željko, Yilmaz, and Kai for being on board of this panel. If I have to conclude in one sentence, I'm pretty happy to see that all of you are optimistic about the future. What we see here in hospitality is that this COVID situation has, in your opinion and in our opinion, generally hit the market and hit industry in a rather short-term perspective, but obviously mid-term to long-term perspective is still optimistic, and everyone believes in the future of travel and tourism. And having said that, I would like to conclude and hand over to another moderator for the next panel. And once again, thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Michel Perret. I'm the moderator for the manufacturing panel. I will present three business case today, and three panelists will explain situation of manufacturing in the region. As a short introduction, I would say that the Central Eastern Europe region has enjoyed a very strong growth over the past 30 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it was mainly due to different factors. One of them, there was initial manufacturing base prior to that, prior to the fall of the Berlin Wall. Secondly, there was a huge greenfield manufacturing expansion in the region, driven by the German, French, Korean manufacturers. And then there has been a major transfer of technology to the region through this various transfer work. The countries in the region has benefited from this in an unequal manner, I would say. And as another factor that we might take into the consideration during the discussion today, the labor immigration within the region has been massive. during that period within the region or toward Western Europe as well. When we step back about what has been the key factor of success over the last 30 years, well, two of them definitely were EU membership and EU funding. And secondly, there was also some historical ties country to country that have played out a significant role to action by huge manufacturing transfer from west to east. As I said, it has been unequally done across the region. Definitely the Balkan countries didn't enjoy the same level of manufacturing growth as it was in Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary. And then this is, I would say, the trigger point of the discussion of today. What has changed in the environment? Definitely in 2015, we started to see a significant labor shortage across the board from technician, operator, engineers, and that obviously triggered some significant salary increase year over year in the region. This was reflecting an high employment rate and some limitation on immigration in some country as well. Difficult to offset the salary increase by productivity gain. So then suddenly some manufacturer think two things. Well, one was why not considering automation as a solution to this labor shortage? And secondly, why not moving up the value chain toward more R&D and engineering products? And therefore, the three business case that will be presented today are relevant as game changer for the region to address the challenge of gearing toward more R&D activity, more higher technical education, and also sustainability solution in manufacturing. May I introduce you Milan Šlapak as the head of GE in Czech Republic and Slovakia, and maybe you can share with us how did you approach the private and public partnership for that turbo engine development.
Okay, thank you, Michel. Good afternoon, guys, and good morning to the folks who joined from the US. Thank you for having me here. I'll just quickly share the story of GE Aviation and how we got into Czech Republic. So normally, if this would be, let's say, 2019 or let's say January 2020, I would start my speech, my opening speech with like, hey, every 1.2 seconds, there's an airplane on this planet that takes off, and that airplane has a GE technology, GE Aviation technology. Of course, considering the COVID impact, the situation today, when traffic is down 65–70%, the situation is different. Nevertheless, what I'm trying to say is that we didn't earn such a significant market share just by coincidence or just overnight. It's been thanks to the consistently investing heavily into R&D, into innovation, because our strategy is to lead through the technology. Roughly, every year we do $1 billion into R&D as a GE Aviation, and the story I'm going to share is specific to smaller engines, turboprop engines that we produce and that we develop out of Czech Republic. Going a couple of years back, in 2015, we won a major tender with a customer that we always wanted to get. It was Textron, and specifically a division of Textron, Cessna. They do small and mid-sized airplanes, turboprops, and bizjets. And basically the tender we won was to develop a brand new turboprop engine, clean sheet design for a brand new airplane. Just to give you a flavor, roughly, okay, $500 million investment into R&D. And we were selecting a location where to lead this development from. And we selected Czech Republic. In 2016, we signed a contract with the Czech government, investment agreement. More or less in the same time, we signed another strategic R&D collaborative agreement with the local university in Czech Republic, and we picked Czech Republic as a location for newly formed division GE Aviation turboprops. What it includes is the manufacturing, all the services associated with the engines, as well as the R&D, basically the engineering centrum of excellence. Now, what was important for us, why we picked Czech Republic out of the 3 candidates, one, we had existing operations there, so we had a proven track record. We knew what to expect from the team. We knew what to expect from the region and from Czech Republic, if you will. And two, if you have a headquarters somewhere, right, and if you heavily depend on R&D and innovation, what you want to have as a capability is kind of an external network of R&D partners or R&D ecosystem, if you will. Because typically we run 2-3 big projects at the same time, and in parallel we have another 4 to 5 smaller R&D or innovation projects. One option is you do everything in-house, which is old-fashioned and really not competitive in current age, or you have external partners. So you kind of go a la carte, and you pick for this project, I take these 3 partners. For that project, I take the 4 partners. So one of the big objectives was to develop this ecosystem of R&D partners. And we started in 2016, and today we really have it. It's quite successful. The key pillar is this Czech Technical University in Prague. And just to, again, give you a flavor of what it includes. So this university now has quite a substantial testing and development equipment. They have 4 ground test cells for aircraft engines. They have an airplane for flying test bed. If you think about it, no other university on this planet has it. And this was developed over the last 3-4 years, and it's been very effective. This cooperation we have with the university is quite unique, also from a sense that there's an intellectual property involved. We gave an access to the university to the GE proprietary information for the know-how, for the expertise. We've never done anything like that in the past, but this whole project was lots of first time. So that's part of the collaboration agreement. So that's why it's unique. Why we picked also Czech Republic, and I took some notes here. I mean, the key advantage in Czech Republic, it's really the cost of the R&D labor, of the R&D resources. If you compare to the Western Europe or the US, that really gives you quite a huge competitive advantage. Again, it was an existing operations that we expanded, so we knew what to expect. We had all the certificates that you need for aviation industry to develop a new engine, certify it, produce it, service it. We have it here in Czech Republic, so kind of made sense to expand that operation. The ecosystem opportunity, we saw a great potential to really develop it from the universities, from the state-owned research institutes, et cetera. And also at that time, the relationship with the government was pretty strong and pretty good. You kind of feel the love, for the investment, and they really wanted to make it happen. And that was quite a big decision factor as well. And then the last piece I'll mention, we saw the potential to create this very special and very unique public-private R&D partnership, that we've never done at this scale. And, the CDUT was brave enough to do it. And that was one of the key differentiators. Now, also to be fair, there are some challenges. Before I mention a few of them, you can argue, hey, you guys, you should have thought of those risks and the challenges ahead. And yes, we did. We knew that nobody ever did this before, so there would be lots of first times, so lots of risk, of course, associated with it. What we did not expect is that if there's a risk, that there would be kind of a lack of follow-up to solve it, and lack of the willingness to solve it. So that's one of the big lessons learned for us, that it was a calculated risk. It was a very cautious decision. We knew roughly what to expect, but we expected that the issues would be addressed, and they were not in some cases. So then here are the key challenges, again, very specific to our industry, very specific to our investment, and very specific to Czech Republic. I don't want to generalize it for the CEE region, but here it comes, okay? So from our perspective, the system is perfectly suitable for R&D in a scale, let's say 1 to 3, maybe up to $5 million. Okay, the system is there, external funding, the cooperation with the partners, it works perfectly, no real issues. Once you get to the cooperation, like let's say $50+ million, this one is like $65-70 million. Okay, cooperation, it doesn't work. Okay, I mean, sorry, let me rephrase it. The system is not ready for that. It requires lots of maintenance, lots of babysitting, lots of extra management, micromanagement, and the system is just not set up, to support such a massive R&D. Bureaucracy. Our public partners, they face tons of bureaucracy, which is imposed by the ministries under they fall under. So whether it's Ministry of Education, Ministry of Industry and Trade, lots of bureaucracy imposed by the university and public research institutes. And very often it creates the fear that really cripples the people to take the actions, okay, to follow up on the issues, to have a flexible solution for the issues. So I'll say that's probably number one issue, this bureaucracy associated with this public-private partnership. One issue that we're facing, but no surprise there, cybersecurity, IP protection, because what we do is not trivial. There's really high value added engineering and highly proprietary technologies involved. So we know that we are target for certain groups that are trying to get the IP either directly from us or from our partners. So we got to be careful. But again, it's a good advice to be careful about it. Don't underestimate it.
So Milan, may I suggest that we take to this point you brought to us. I think it's a great private-public cooperation at the end between the tech units and General Electric. May I expand that conversation about R&D, because you introduced that discussion on R&D and manufacturing, which means that to scale up to upgrade manufacturing in the region, we have to definitely to go to R&D activity, and that's a good example of that one. I would like to hand over to Ivan, who is a chairman of the automotive industry cluster in Bulgaria, to tell us about, what is the magnitude of the challenge he's facing in this industry in Bulgaria, but maybe also across the region, and tell us about your project, your program to team up with university for training of engineers. Can you say to us, Ivan?
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. Well, I'm listening to Mr. Slopak, and I'm thinking we have nearly the same problems. But let me tell you our story in terms of the automotive industry, and I will make also a slight transition to the ICT industry, because when we talk about R&D and also the manufacturing, which goes now up to the level of really smart manufacturing and smart technologies, these both sectors are connected. So what we have today is 250 companies which are working in Bulgaria for automotive industry, and 60 about of them are R&D companies. So of course they're not level up because manufacturing is leading. But there is one thing that is very important, and this is our legacy in the information technology. So Bulgaria had a very good position since 80s and later 90s up to today in the ICT. And we have a really great basis of developing the software, of course, specialists, engineers in general, and etc. The automotive cluster itself was established in 2010, but some companies, like the one that I'm leading as well, which is the largest R&D company in Bulgaria, we are already 20 years on the market. So how this is happening and how the market evolves. I told you today we have 250 companies. It didn't happen for one day. It's just the question are who are the first ones, what they will be facing, what are the challenges and how they will overcome. Of course, really to retain and to sustain the talent nowadays, it's really a big challenge, because people can freely move. They have a choice.
there is a competition even inside the Euro between West and East, or West and North and South, in terms of remuneration levels and etc. So it's a very challenging game to continue and sustaining our talent in the businesses to grow. But obviously it's happening in Bulgaria because what we're seeing is a constant growth in new companies entering our market. The engineering centers are usually above 1,000 people, and 50% of them are even more, sometimes are software engineers, electronics, and etc. And talking about automotive, let's not forget about the ecosystem around every supplier. In the context of manufacturing, we have a great robotics specialist. We have so many companies which nowadays are really partners of these manufacturing companies which are operating in Bulgaria by providing a very robust knowledge and experience in mechatronics, in robotics, so they can sustain and support different manufacturing processes. What is the magic? Because we talk about companies, obviously foreign investments are the basis of this of what's happening in Bulgaria. But related to people, this is of course the core is education. We have very robust, developed, very highly skilled technical education in the past, which during the 19th and early 2000, in the year 2000, was not that at that level. Here it comes the business. So business nowadays, or the businesses actually in Bulgaria, are very heavily involved with the universities and also with the high schools, talking about dual education, for example, because this become a very modern topic. It won't happen other way, in the other way. Education itself is a conservative system, so it requires a lot of push and energy from the business, and also an open mind from the management of the schools to understand what the business wants, because at the end of the day, their product is becoming our workers or employees. So to fight with this conservative system, of course, it requires, first of all, to give them the perspective how important the investment in education in the right direction will pay off later on, which is happening, obviously, as I mentioned, in the automotive industry. How to streamline a little bit the IT as well in the channel of what are the, for example, software needs in the automotive, and what are the right specialists. And what we are facing today, for example, to have university programs dedicated to automotive industry, automotive electronics, and etc. So basically, this is the framework. So the government itself, it's a more important partner in this process. Without, for example, Ministry of Education, without the support to the government, the public universities of the government, these results won't happen. Still, the fight in the region is, again, similar to the salaries, as I mentioned, is the Western universities versus our universities. And when you compare the curriculums, no much difference. I think the COVID-19 situation changed a little bit the landscape. So because people or the students cannot travel that much, we see now this year increase of the students in our technical universities, which is a good sign. We need also to see the region itself. If you want the Balkans or even the Central Europe and the Balkans, now more and more we see educational systems which are connected. They are working in a joint system. The European network of universities now is becoming much more popular, and we see this as one of the key trends that will sustain the talents, will give equal access to the same education and the quality of this education, and at the end of the day will be beneficial for the employers and the companies which are operating in Bulgaria, and also are planning to enter the Bulgaria as the new investors. And I will open here the bracket a little bit, because the company which I'm a part of has operations in Romania as well, and I see the same situation over there. there is no big difference in the need and the cooperation between the business and the universities. And of course, talking about people, we need to encounter how the labor market has changed because of the COVID-19. And what are the consequences? Of course, I can mention different projects that are ongoing in the moment in our country. For nearshoring, for example, this is a very strategic point from our Ministry of Economy, our investment agency, and 14 international chambers of commerce in Bulgaria. And the focus is the mechatronics, of course, automotive is still the fastest growing industry, machinery, biotechnology, chemical industry, and pharmaceuticals. What is the key here? The nearshoring topic is more and more under discussion nowadays. This is partially because we saw what is the effect, for example, where the global economy goes in the lockdown. Of course, to the extent of where the resources will sit and how to position the resources or the companies in the logistics or the supply chain as well. But I am a fan of a little bit more global picture, and we need to also view the region as a map, as a system of all our countries here, and we should not look just over ourselves. We are running in a system of joint efforts from the countries around us, and we should continue like this, even on a higher level. And one thing, because I tend to talk about COVID, because this highly reflects us, it's also with the respect to the U.S. colleagues. This is the transatlantic effect on the labor market. Now people can work from everywhere, and what we are seeing and observing is that the specialists can be beneficial for the both sides over the seas. Working from Bulgaria, for example, for U.S. companies and vice versa in this very dynamic system of startups, if you want, and scale-ups, up to the companies who are operating on the both sides. So we need to look really this system again on this holistic approach, because it reflects our country, but we are not isolated.
Thank you, Ivan, for this introduction. As we said, we've been talking about R&D activity in ourselves. So then you really expand us some views about training, education for technician engineers in Bulgaria and also elsewhere. So I like to expand the view to the participant. I'd like to introduce Rosa, who is the head of Coca-Cola in several countries, across Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Slovenia. And like Rosa, you talk about another aspect of manufacturing, sustainability. And I think the experience you will share with us is definitely part of the puzzle that we are trying to address today, which is how to scale up manufacturing operation across the region. I hand it over to you, Rosa. You're on mute. Can you unmute your microphone, please?
The most common use sentence this year. Thank you, Michelle, and warm regards to you, Ivan, Milan, and all the participants in this virtual conference and the panel. Very happy and honored to be with you, as you said, to share a bit of a different perspective, adding on to what the two colleagues already shared. As you said, I'm coming from a different type of a business. I'm coming from a beverage production and distribution business. Working for the Coca-Cola bottler, Coca-Cola Hellenic Bottling Company, responsible for the operations in 3 markets, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Slovenia. Maybe that's important also to understand a bit of a context about the sustainable manufacturing and the lens that we are having in our organization when it comes to sustainability in general, but then also sustainability in the supply chain and in the manufacturing in particular. I will not be presenting a specific business case. I will rather be talking about the importance of sustainability in this critical area. How we are seeing this and how we are actually also living and breathing this is sustainability as a strategy being a vital part of everything what we do. And that also relates to our manufacturing, which is basically then channeled in the four main areas. The first one is related to saving the energy and protecting the climate. I'm going to elaborate a bit on every single one of them. The second is about the sustainable packaging and recycling. The third one is about managing the water resources, and the fourth one is about the waste management. So I would say for us as a Hellenic company who's operating in 28 markets and also listed on the London Stock Exchange, those are the four strategies that are not changing over the years. I am with the company for 18 years, and those always have been our priorities. So when it comes to saving the energy and protecting the climate, we pledged several years ago to reduce the energy consumption and the overall impact of our emission. As you know, being in a bottling business and at the same time being in the business of serving our customers, which in my territories are 55,000, we are also placing our cold drink equipment, which are having a certain footprint. So we pledge to reduce the CO2, and we are also managing to reducing our energy consumption. And in our Zagreb plants, in my territory, there are two, Zagreb and Sarajevo, we are actually using the energy from 100% renewable sources. Another point how we are also looking into saving the energy is constant efforts that we are putting into reducing the raw materials and reducing the materials we're using in our preform production, where we are more and more year after, and years after we are in the decreasing the amount of the plastic that's used in our preforms, so-called, PET. At the same time, we are also, in our cooling devices, we are also ensuring that they are HFC free. And currently, we are placing 99% of our coolers that we have in the market actually are having a zero carbon footprint. We have some part of the old fleet which is still there in the market. When it comes to the sustainable packaging, the recycling, you know that the Coca-Cola company and us being the bottler of the Coca-Cola company is actually committed to reduce the waste. And we have the zero waste program as well related to our packaging and the plastic. Currently, we are trying to make efforts to increase the number of the recycled PET that's used in the production of our products. In Zagreb plant, currently we are at 20% of the recycled PET that's used in our production. And in the water category, we are already at 100% recycled PET used, which means for every bottle that we place in the market, we actually collect it back, and then we produce a new bottle completely out of the recycled PET on our Remerkele water brand. The third area that we are looking for is managing our water resources, which is again reducing the water as one of the key ingredients in our production. And in the last 3 years, we managed to decrease it for more than 50%, constantly putting the efforts in improving the efficiency in the manufacturing process. In Sarajevo plant, which is another plant in Bosnia and Herzegovina, actually, total water use per liter of the produced beverages, this is the KPI that we are constantly tracking, in 2018 was 52% less than compared with 2010, which means within the 8 years, reduction of almost 50%. The indicator for that one, and that's a very important area for us, having in mind how water might be scarce as a resource globally, is also the Gold European Water Stewardship Certificate that we have been awarded with. And then finally, the waste management, where really we did a tremendous effort when it comes to recycling 99% of the totally generated waste in our Zagreb plant and 95% in Bosnia. Now, why this all is so important? Because we believe that the industries and the consumers and the customers, in terms of the sentiment, in terms of the understanding, and in terms of the priorities, are more and more pursuing profit with purpose. And they're looking for brand with purpose, and they're looking for the companies with purpose. So that's one part of the equation. The another one is also our corporate responsibility to the society and to the communities. Because in the same way we are having a sustainable and a profitable business, we're also obliged to give it back. And that's why we pay so much attention when it comes to our impact on the energy and on protecting the climate and protecting the environment. I don't want to take it longer. I could talk a lot about these efforts. I would rather, Michelle, ask you maybe to help and channel a bit with any additional questions from your end.
Yeah, absolutely, Rosa. First of all, thanks for the clarity of your introduction. Definitely, we have some questions. I mean, first of all, my comment after this free introduction is, as we speak about manufacturing in Central Eastern Europe, we are not anymore talking about low-cost assembly. Each of you presented a very sophisticated solution to address business technical needs, and I think to the audience, it has to be very, very, very clear for that. So I have a few questions. I received a few questions in the meantime. First of all, it's a question to Milan and then to Ivan. You both in your projects you identified the bureaucracy or the how conservative it might be to deal with the local authority. Can you share with us what has been, I would say, how you would recommend any potential company to go after such a project, to approach the local authority, whether it is a university, in both cases it is university, or agency, or national agency. Ivan, can you start with the answer, or Milan, up to you.
Me one if you want.
Okay. Ivan? Okay.
Right, yeah, let me start. So education, I would view it in a two-way direction. So education, historically, we, as I mentioned in my introduction, we are very relying on the public universities because still they hold the knowledge and their preferred organizations in terms of especially engineering or profiles that are needed for manufacturing, automotive or mechatronics. These are the institutions. Again, as I mentioned, I would say that in the last 10 years, but especially in the last 5 years, we are witnessing really a dramatic increase in the cooperation between the business and the universities. Obviously, the business wants it, but definitely the universities are much more open to what we want. Why? Because we are, as businesses, we are investing in our education institutions. These are donations of different equipment, so that at the end of the day, the students need to have access or to be used to tools and environment, maximum close to the real environment in the manufacturing sites or R&D centers. And nevertheless, it's the fact that students are coming on a very early stage as interims on different programs and etc. to our companies. It's not a surprise, actually. It's a normal practice now that every company, or almost every company, has a certain academy, internal academy. So the students or people who are not with the right skills at the moment can apply for these academies, and at the end of the day, to become engineers in the R&D or engineers in manufacturing, operators, and etc. So about the bureaucracy, yes, there is a bureaucracy because to have a diploma of engineer, to gain the degree, you need to cover certain requirements which are on the government level or are based on the certain law, or they are also a subject of acceptance from other countries as well when the diplomas need to be agreed on the certain level. So this is the bureaucracy. Other part of it, it's also that dynamics is different, if we can say that this is bureaucracy. Educational institutions are not with the same dynamics as the business. And we tend to criticize them about that. But on the other hand, they are scientific institutions. They're really, their job is to produce the right, or to, of course, to give the ground, but also to produce the right talents for us. So, multiple aspects, but for Bulgaria, I can say our success as businesses is really nowadays based on the success or the progress of our educational institutions, because they finally become open to our needs. But still, there is a way to go.
Thank you, Ilan. Milan, can you comment on that question about interaction with the public sector?
Okay, sure. So I'll maybe just to put it in the frame, if I look at our collaboration with the local public organizations, let's say, okay, I would put it into the three different phases. The phase one was to build the testing and R&D infrastructure, the ground test cells, the test airplanes, test engines, etc., etc. The second one is using the infrastructure, really running the tests, running the experiments, generating the data, okay? And the third phase is the R&D itself, using the data that you generated. The second phase and third phase, it's really between us and the universities, or between us and the research institutes. No issues there, pretty much, right? Because it's kind of a, regular business as usual, no issues there. The first stage, that in our case takes 4.5 years, because we're talking massive and highly complex testing and the R&D infrastructure. That's where the issues are. And to be very specific, if our partner, state-owned partner, is using public tenders to build, procure, contract, and develop this infrastructure, it is an issue, because the public procurement is a complex process. And it's perfectly suited if you're buying something standard, off the shelf, right, commodity or something like that. You define what it is, and then your vendor delivers exactly what you specify in the ideal world. If you do a highly sophisticated and high-value R&D, things do change, right? There are things you don't know, because there are things that you don't know what you don't know, right? Lots of things can change. That's the beauty of the R&D. And you fail during the R&D as well. And very often you do want to fail during the R&D. But the public procurements, the public tenders don't work like that, okay? And our partners are getting into major issues that their stakeholders, the individual ministries are telling them, no, this is a specification that you put into the tender. This is a specification you contracted. Okay, 2 years later, you will learn something new. You want to modify it. Too late, too bad. You got to stick to it. So you're losing the flexibility, and I understand why, okay? I understand why it's happening. I'm just saying that if you want to do highly sophisticated R&D, really research, that you don't know what you don't know, this is limiting your flexibility. It's limiting your maneuvering options to be agile and adjust to the new situation. So this is a specific situation. The question is what to do about it. Now, knowing what we learn on this, one, I would definitely talk in advance with our partner, like if this is in your scope of work, how are you going to do it? Do you have the funding secured for that? Are you going to do public tendering, or do you get some kind of an exception? How will your stakeholders approve potential changes to the scope of work or to the definition of infrastructure? And if I feel there's no flexibility, and I know that it's a highly sophisticated R&D, I would run away. I would find a different business model, or I would find a different partner. Because if you have a real program like we have, you're on an aggressive timeline, you have a very defined scope of work, it's R&D, you cannot be limited on flexibility.
Thank you, Milan. I think the dynamics between public and private sectors would be about the same in Central Eastern Europe as any other part of the world. I think it's definitely a company challenge to deal with. I have a question regarding the program you just introduced to us about sustainability, which is, by the way, a very comprehensive sustainability program, including CO2 emission reduction, energy consumption, water management, and so on. Can you describe to us how your employees have valued that program, how they feel about it?
Look, obviously, when it comes to employees, there are different elements of it. First, we also, in terms of the culture and in terms of the people, we run something which we called ambassador programs. We have a deep conviction that all of our employees are the ambassadors of our business and ambassadors of our brand. You all know that working for Coca-Cola, we are all privately as well exposed to a different urban mix. And we are all exposed to a different mix when it comes to questions being faced in our private or professional matters. At the same time, our sales force, which in our 3 countries is 300 people, is actually the working force that is every day having the contact with a certain number of different customers. And even if they are not asked specific questions about the business, about the brand, we think it's vital and it's very important that our people understand what are our growth strategy and why we are doing what we are doing. Same, and one good connection towards that was actually our actions when it comes to COVID and when it comes to keeping this open communication with our people without a single day being lost or being in the market. Because we have a portion of our people that are working from home. Obviously, this customer support functions, and we also have a customer-facing functions, which are like warehouse, distribution, manufacturing, and also our salespeople who are there, and they have to come to specific facilities to work or at the customer premises. So when it comes to our sustainability, again, we connected very much with our purpose as a company. We utilize it very much to build a culture that gives our people a certain level of the connection to company as such, but at the same time helping them identifying whatever we do, what's the reason behind, why we are so much worried about whether we are placing a new fleet of the coolers, what's the carbon footprint, why we are so much concerned about how much water we are using to produce 1 liter of Coke. Or, in the COVID time, we did a very fast it was not so big, but at the same time was a very agile investment when it comes to the augmented reality glasses, allowing maintenance initiatives in our manufacturing plants in order to avoid unnecessary, visitors or the maintenance technicians coming to our premises in order to limit the exposure of our people to a risk of a pandemic. For example, another element that we are also using to improve at the same time the efficiency, the cost, but also to elevate overall the look and feel of the working environment is also using this vision picking in our warehouse and in our distribution facilities. So we believe that also, as progressive as we are in following to our sustainability commitments, that goes very well hand in hand with the engagement of our employees, with their ability to identify with a greater purpose, but at the same time also enables them and enables all of us to be a credible ambassadors of the brand and the products that we are selling. Because in the essence, we are a selling organization and we are serving the customers and the consumers. And that's why it's very important that while doing so, we make sure that we do it the right way. Thank you, Michelle. I will stop there because
it's a very aligned organization. I think that's also a valuable program for the employees, or what you are saying to us. Thank you. So, Ivan, I may expand a little bit what you said early on. I'd like to expand about the electrical car. I mean, everybody in the industry, automotive industry, is talking about electrical car. And then you talk about the upgrading of the skill, the training, education of Bulgarian students to go to the field of engineering in Bulgaria. Is there any specific skill or any specific program that you might consider to support the growth of electrical car within the current cluster of automotive industry in Bulgaria?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Definitely, I think the hit in the Europe is electrical vehicles, and Europe will be a lead continent in general because of the investments in trend, although the expectation in the automotive industry was that other continents will lead this, but luckily it's Europe. But we started very early in advance, even before now electrical vehicles are so discussed. What started different, and this is purely on the educational level, what I would explain. First of all, the dilemma now is that the infrastructure is now is delayed, so there will be not enough charging stations and etc., which also tends to the infrastructure of the electrical companies, to the power plants and etc. and etc. But what we did, what actually our companies and also our associations are doing, is to start on a very early level. These are the technical professionals, high schools, for example. They have access to electrical engines. Some of them really to real electrical cars. They can touch it, and they know on a very early stage how to maintain, for example, an electrical car, electrical engine actually. When it comes to the universities, now this is on the level of innovations. This is also lead to now some inventions, if you want, or really innovations in the charging stations, and into the education or producing more engineers for the power plants. As you see, this is all connected system, and really the push for the electrical vehicles is causing a chain reaction. When it comes to the R&D, for the standard companies which are present in Bulgaria, this is not a dramatic change because automotive electronics or chips on sensors or powertrains that we're doing, we are anyhow supplying also now the new models. But the real change, the real new wave goes to, as I mentioned, on the level of the high schools. These are the technicians. These are the future operators. These are the people who will be working in the battery manufacturing, which we expect as well as an investment in Bulgaria. These also have, talking about batteries, a reflection over the chemical engineers, and etc. and etc. So we are observing a very dynamic environment in terms of how the companies are supporting, and as in my previous note, also the reaction of the universities. But as anything else, we are also expecting some or engagement from the government on a higher level so that we can build the proper infrastructure. But when it comes to experts, and when it comes to people who are or should be prepared to work in this environment, I think we are in a very right way.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. It gives us trust that we are aiming toward this electrification of the car very, very, very quick. So, Milan, I have a question for you. In your presentation, you mentioned that for the size of the business, $6 million investment, doing that partnership was something that's absolutely acceptable or doable. As you mentioned also having a much bigger investment. I think you put the number of $60 million, but maybe some limitation. Can you expand a little bit to us what kind of limitation for broader investment would be?
So, for the standard R&D projects that we partner with external guys, and whether it's state-owned research institutes or universities, the system has been here for a while and everybody knows how to use it. The external auditors, the guys who do evaluate the project applications and the guys who evaluate the results of the project, they know how to do it, right? It's kind of a business as usual, no surprise. And, so everybody's in a comfort zone, so you just, you focus on the execution, and I don't really see any issues there. Even it provides some flexibility if you need to extend the project, slightly change the scope, push the deadline here and there to adjust to the market or to the end customer. It works perfectly. If you add one more zero or two more zeros, it gets lots of people outside comfort zone. It gets more complicated into the funding on your partner side, right? If you're a private business and you see a business case, you decide to invest, $30+ million, you do it, you secure the funding. But your external partners, if they're coming from a public sector, they don't have that cash on their bank account, so they got to get it from somewhere. And either it's a ministry of this or ministry of that, or kind of a funding scheme program or EU funding program. So it's getting more complicated. There's extra security, of course, to make sure there's no fraud, and less flexibility. And if you do something, again, for the first time, you're kind of finding the path, and nobody else did it before, people are cautious. And the guys, kind of a mid-management, low management at the ministries, they are afraid because their signature is under certain documents, and they don't feel comfortable, and I don't blame them. So that's why it's a system issue.
Yeah, Milan, may I summarize that definitely the amount of investment is a critical item. So if any company does have to do it, has to start with a small project to get the right level of involvement of actors as well as control, so they don't get into too many complex situations. So that's a really good advice. As a time we're running out of time, I like as a last key question for today, I like to expand a little bit of what Ivan said regarding COVID-19. He mentioned a couple of behavior changes with students studying at home, with potential working across countries through computers, and like that. Maybe Ruza and Milan, and as well as Ivan, you gave your perspective after the COVID-19, at the end of the pandemic. What would be the change in terms of behavior in the labor market of your employees? Ruza, can you comment on that?
Yeah. Gladly, Michelle, thank you very much. I was reflecting on also what Milan was saying in his first and the intro section. What, at least in my industry, what we are facing, that supply chain and manufacturing, let's say, I dare to say, but don't get me wrong, it's maybe not so attractive area like it's, for example, marketing. Because when you work for a Coca-Cola, then usually people are thinking about marketing, about sales, about commercial. So I believe what we faced there before the pandemic, it's going to become more and more, I would say, emphasized in a post-COVID time. The first thing is going to be how fast and how agile we are in bringing the new technologies into our industry to allow development, learning and development for the people we are acquiring. Second thing, what I think is going to be crucial, again, being conscious of the time, is this, I call it a grassroots program. Now for the last 3-4 years, we are having a sustainable program of bringing in, we call them management trainees, to a supply chain, to manufacturing, in order to allow us for the new one, let's say, profiles from the younger generation. Those profiles are going to be thrilled by working with the new technologies. And those profiles are also bringing us the novelties in terms of the augmented reality, in terms of the new technology used. So I believe that this trend is going to be...
Rosa, we are very short of time, only 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
may I summarize?
Yes, please.
Sorry about that. Definitely new technology will have to be enhanced and after the COVID. And what we are learning today will be a big, big plus after the COVID. May I say, Milan, 1 minute, 1 minute, can you share your perspective on this?
I think we will see further digitization, the MRP, ERP systems, digitization of supply chains. People talk about it since 2000, okay? And just COVID basically proved us that, hey, it was all bullshit. We were thinking we were digital, but we were maybe 30-40% digital, and now it's time to get to the next level. That's one. Two, home offices. I don't believe that people will be 100% on home offices. People are social, animals. They wanna work together. We see it already now. 3 weeks at home to work 2 days at the office. That's the right mix. That might change. So it will be some kind of a flexible home office dash office. And the third one, really, we have to educate ourselves, and our employees to be more digital, using all different tools which exist there, like our kids. They are digital kids. We have to learn the same.
Thank you, Milan. Ivan, you have 30 seconds. Very short.
Yeah, I'll be short.
Final comment.
Digitalization and the fact that now people can work from everywhere using the right tools gives very much opportunity. So the COVID shows us that we can work from everywhere. Other than that, really looking forward for a high profile, but also in the mind for the low profile professionals, because they need to adapt very quickly as the time is now ticking and the transformation is in progress.
So thank you, Ivan, Rosa, and Milan, for sharing with us these views during the last hours. And I hope it helped the participants to have a better understanding of the capability of the region in terms of manufacturing. Thank you for participating to this CEE conference as well, the Future Investing. It was organized by the AmChams of Bulgaria, Croatia, Czechia, Montenegro, Romania, and Slovakia with the support of the US Chamber. The video of the conference will be available in 2 days, as well as the document with the conference summary and conclusion. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.